You're watching Study with Sudhir and we are looking at Tempest Act 3 Scene 2, and this is a scene in which again Caliban, Stefano and Trinculo with a guest appearance by Ariel, of course invisible, play the main parts. Okay, so this is an extension of what happened in Act 2 which we saw when Caliban meets Stefano and Trinculo for the first time on the island, and this is kind of taking forward the subplot. And as I said in Act 2's explanation, this is also some kind of a comic interlude, but at the same time the subplot has some kind of a connection with the main plot, because Caliban is in fact plotting to overthrow Prospero, his master, and replace his master with Stefano, and it is that narrative that continues even in Act 3 Scene 2, right? Now, Caliban, as I said, is attracted to the idea of having Stefano as his master, and also he thinks that he can thereby get rid of Prospero's hold over him. This scene sees the second conspiracy to kill in the play. The first conspiracy, of course, did not come to any kind of fruition. The one which was hatched to kill Alonso, that did not happen because of Ariel again, and this one will see the trying to overthrow Prospero, and that is a plot being hatched by Caliban, right? Sebastian and Antonio's plot did not work out at the very last minute. So the point that I'm trying to make is that conspiracy, palace intrigue on this island strangely, and this kind of violence is another running theme throughout the Tempest, which you should again take note of. Now, though both Stefano and Trinculo are not very high in terms of hierarchy in the court of Naples, in the court of King Alonso, Caliban has actually put them up on a pedestal, because till now Stefano was a servant to Alonso, but now he has a servant. So that's a major difference as far as the stature of Stefano is concerned, going by these scenes taking place in the Tempest. Okay, so that is the overall narrative that you should be aware of before we get into Act 3 Scene 2. Now, all three of them, Caliban, Stefano and Trinculo, enter. Of course, they are on another part of the island. Stefano says to Trinculo, "Tell not me, when the butt is out we will drink water, not a drop before. Therefore bear up and board them, servant monster, drink to me." Now, Stefano is saying that until all the royal wine is finished, and you know it for a fact that he has got a large stock of it, I will not drink any water, and tells Caliban that let's continue to drink. So he has kind of let Caliban also taste the wine, as a result of which Caliban is also following him like a loyal servant, right? Trinculo says, "Servant monster, the folly of this island. They say there is but 5 upon this isle, we are 3 of them. If the other 2 be brain like us, the state taught us." Now, who are the 5 that Trinculo is referring to? The 3 of them, that is Caliban, Trinculo and Stefano, and Prospero and his daughter Miranda, right? The folly essentially refers to as a mistake that is happening on this island, and he says if the other 2 on this island, that is Miranda and Prospero, also are like us in terms of intelligence, because he does not know what is the background of Prospero and Miranda, obviously, right? Then the state will go to dogs, as in tortoise, it will be very shaky. Tortoise means it will be very shaky, right? Stefano says, "Drink, servant monster, when I bid thee, thy eyes are almost set in thy head." It's also because all of them are intoxicated, all 3 of them, so much of what they speak will also be a lot of nonsense. So be mindful of that everything they speak will not really be sensible, but essentially they do serve in trying to tell the reader and the viewer while watching the play what is really on their mind. Set in thy head means fixed and staring, right? Now, Trinculo says, "Where should they be set else? He were a brave monster indeed if they were set in his tail." Now, Trinculo, because he does not like either Caliban, and also he is feeling envious of Stefano, given the manner in which though Stefano and Trinculo are almost equal in rank, he is being seen as someone of a higher rank and stature in Caliban's eyes. So he is obviously feeling a little envious of Stefano. So he says, he goes on interfering, and he says he would be a brave monster if the eyes were really set in his tail. Again, a bit of nonsensical talk. Stefano, "My man monster had drowned his tongue in sack. For my part, the sea cannot drown me. I swam before I could recover the shore 35 leagues off and on. By this light thou shalt be my lieutenant monster or my standard. Now these are important lines because Stephano, even though he's intoxicated, he's saying that how Caliban is completely drunk, and he says even sea cannot drown me because I've already swum 35 miles to reach the shore after the shipwreck during the tempest, right? So he tells Caliban that you will be my lieutenant or certainly my most important officer. So he's giving him the stature, the rank of being his lieutenant or being his most important monster, right? Trinculo says, your lieutenant, if you list, he is no stand-down. Or Trinculo is completely dismissive of what Caliban really is. He says he can be a lieutenant if you like, but he has no standard to be an important officer. Clearly shows that he disapproves of Caliban, right? So that is what, if he is no standard, basically saying that he is incapable of even standing on his legs. So both in a literal sense and also in a metaphorical sense, he is disapproving of Caliban, that he is so drunk that he cannot even stand on his legs. Stephano, we will not run Monsieur Monster. Monsieur again is a term which is used for Mr. in French. So he says we shall not run away from our enemy. Mr. Monster will show the courage to face them, right? Nor go either, but you will lie like dogs and yet say nothing either. So Trinculo continuing to poke both Stephano and especially Caliban, and he's saying that he's deliberately trying to misunderstand whatever. When he's saying that we will face them, he's trying to take a more literal meaning, saying that instead you will lie on the ground like dogs lie and will not say anything, whereas Stephano actually meant to say that they will face their enemies bravely in a courageous manner, right? Now, mooncalf, speak once in thy life if thou beest a good mooncalf. Mooncalf as in monster. Caliban now speaks. How does thy honor? Let me lick thy shoe. I will not serve him. He is not valiant. Now Caliban says he is very, very servile and eager to serve Stephano. But he says, I will not serve Trinculo, saying that he is not a brave man. So obviously putting a benchmark and saying that while Stephano is good enough to be served as a master, that he can be his master, he will not do the same or show the same respect to Trinculo. He does not put him on the same kind of pedestal, right? Now, Trinculo, though thou liest, most ignorant monster, I am in case to jostle a constable. Why thou debauched fish? Thou was there ever man a coward that hath drunk so much sack as I today. Wilt thou tell a monstrous lie, being but half a fish and half a monster? Now, Trinculo gets very angry, adding to the sense of envy that he is already reeling under. He is also drunk. So, three different emotions that he is going through. He scolds Caliban, he accuses him of telling a lie, and he says that I am actually good enough to push a constable, and whereas you are a drunk fish. And he says, can a man who has drunk so much not be brave? He equates essentially drinking with courage, and he says, how can you tell such a lie, a monstrous lie, while being half a fish and half a monster? Earlier we were told that he's half a human, but he's being referred now as half a monster, a demon of sorts, by Trinculo. So strong words being used by Trinculo for Caliban, right? Debauched here essentially means drunken. Now after Trinculo has kind of shot out at Caliban, Caliban replies. He says, lo, how he mocks me. Wilt thou let him, my lord? So obviously he wants Stephano to come to his rescue. Caliban, Trinculo says, he goes on teasing. He says, oh my God, he calls Stephano a lord. How can he be such a natural fool? So he basically feels that he's kind of putting Stephano on a pedestal, and Stephano definitely does not deserve that kind of a stature. Caliban, lo, again, bite him to death, I prithee. So he wants Stephano to kind of bite Trinculo to death. So there is this war of words essentially taking place between Trinculo and Caliban, and Trinculo is asking Stephano to intercede on his behalf, right? Stephano says, Trinculo, keep a good tongue in your head. If you prove a mutineer, the next tree, the poor monster is my subject, and he shall not suffer indignity. Now, when he says keep a good tongue in your head, essentially means you need to talk in a civil and a polite manner. Now the next tree essentially means that you will be hanged on the next tree. Now basically it is referring to a practice those times that if you were a rebel, you would be hanged on the nearest tree. And he says, this poor monster, referring to Caliban, is my servant and therefore cannot be treated badly by you. Caliban, I thank my noble lord, will thou be pleased to hearken once again to the suit I made to thee. So he is happy that Stephano has used strong words, that he will use the next nearby tree as gallows to hang Trinculo, and therefore he thanks Stephano, and he says, will you want to hear again to what I told you, the proposal that I told you, the proposal that he had made in Act 2. And he says, I certainly will. Now marry essentially here does not mean in terms of marrying somebody, it's basically taking an oath by Virgin Mary in good faith. He says, I will listen if you kneel, and then I will listen to your proposal, right? Now at this stage, Ariel has entered the scene, but obviously he is invisible. The three people cannot see him. Now Caliban, and now he plays his tricks in this particular part of the scene. As I told thee, I am subject to a tyrant, a sorcerer, that by his sorcery, there is a sorcerer, that by his cunning hath cheated me of the island. Now Caliban complains now about Prospero. Almost on cue, he is complaining about Prospero, saying that I am a slave to this tyrant, a sorcerer, as in a magician, who has usurped, who has taken over this island by his cunning ways. Now we saw earlier in the Caliban introduction scene also how Caliban had complained, saying that this was an island which was owned by his mother, that is Sycorax the witch, and Prospero, because of his magic, had actually taken over and now controls the entire island and also controls Caliban and has made him a slave thanks to his magic. Now Ariel at that point in time says, thou liest. Now thou liest, the interesting part is that he is imitating Trinculo's voice. It will seem to these two other guys, that is Caliban and Stephano, it is that Trinculo speaking that you are lying, where it is Ariel who has imitated Trinculo's voice. Caliban immediately gets angry. He says, thou liest, thou jesting monkey, thou my valiant master would destroy thee, I do not lie. So Caliban gets angry, calls him a joker of a monkey, and he says, I wish my master should kill you, I do not lie. Stephano, the fact of the matter is that Caliban is not lying. The fact is that Prospero now controls the island, and Caliban, obviously for reasons which he thinks are legitimate, believes that this island would have been otherwise his if Prospero and Miranda had not arrived on that island. Stephano, Trinculo, if you trouble him any more in his tale, by his hand I will supplant some of your teeth. So he says, if you trouble him any more, I will knock off some of your teeth. Supplant as in knock it out. Now Trinculo, why I said nothing. Trinculo denies that he ever said anything, which is again true because it is Ariel who has imitated Trinculo's voice. Stephano, mum as in hush, keep quiet, then and no more, proceed. So Caliban, then he says, I say by sorcery he got this isle, from me he got it, if thy greatness will revenge it on him, for I now thou darest, but this thing dare not. Now he is making a comparison between Stephano and Trinculo. He says Prospero got this island by his magic and the tyrant, and if you punish him, it will be good revenge. And he says then that you can do it, but this thing, that is referring to Trinculo, referring to him in a demeaning manner, this calling him a thing, saying that this thing cannot do it, as in he cannot be part of that revenge. He is not good enough to take revenge on him. And thing essentially means almost like a creature kind of thing. This creature can't do it. And Stephano says that's most certain, right? And he says, you will be the lord of the island and I shall serve you. Caliban is making the relationship, the equation with Stephano pretty much clear, putting it out on in black and white. Now Caliban says, thereafter he says, when Stephano says, can you take me there? He says, I will take him to you when he is asleep. So he is now revealing the plot. He says, I will take you to Prospero when he is asleep, because he knows, because Caliban knows that when he is awake, when Prospero is awake, he cannot be defeated. He is so powerful thanks to his books, thanks to his magic. So he says, where thou mayest knock a nail into his head. That is, at that time you can knock a nail into his head. So obviously a very violent death is what Caliban is envisaging, thinking, imagining for Prospero. Now Ariel again says, thou liest, thou canst not. Again in Trinculo's voice, again accusing Caliban of lying. Caliban gets abusive all over again. He says, you drunken idiot. And what a pied ninny this is. Pied ninny essentially referring to him as a fool. So referring to him as a fool. And he says that he also calls him a scurvy patch. A patch means a fool who is wearing a party colored garment, right? So he is referring to him as someone who is a fool, and he calls him a drunken idiot, and he says, you please beat him. To Stephano, beat him and take away his bottle where he has nothing to, so that he has nothing to drink, but he only has to then drink the salty water of the sea. But because I will not show where the fresh water springs are there on this island, and that is something only Caliban knows. He has shown it to Miranda and Prospero. He's offered to show it to Stephano in the earlier act, in the earlier scene, but here he says, I will not show it to this guy, that is Trinculo, so that he will be forced to drink the salty water of the sea. Trinculo, what did I? I did nothing. I will go further off. So he says, I did not say anything. Again true, because it is Ariel who is playing this mischief. But Stephano warns Trinculo. He says, please refrain from interrupting Caliban while he is speaking, and he says, if he does, I will turn you out. And he says, do not make me angry anymore, right? And don't invite danger. He says, I will forget all mercy and beat like the way a codfish is beaten before it is put out for consumption, right? So he is kind of warning Trinculo in very clear terms that if he does not stop doing so, which of course he thinks he is doing, whereas we know it is Ariel who is doing it, the audience knows that it is Ariel who is doing it, but he wants Trinculo that he will do this. So basically Ariel creating confusion, again adding to the comic element in the Tempest and trying to take a bit of the tension away from what is happening in the Tempest, the various conspiracies which are taking place. So this conspiracy is taking place at the same time. Shakespeare has mixed it up with a lot of humor and jest. Stephano says, do I so, take thou that, beat Trinculo as you like this, give me the lie another time. So he says, Trinculo accuses in Ariel's voice now of thou liest, saying that he now accuses Stephano of lying and provokes Stephano to beat him, and Stephano ends up beating up Trinculo. He says, this is for you. If you like to be beaten up again, say it again that I lied, I will beat you again. Trinculo says, I did not give the lie, meaning to say that I did not say that you lied. And he asks him, have you run out of your mind and also lost your ability to hear? May a curse fall on your bottle. May a curse fall on your bottle. This is the result of your drinking so much of wine. He says, may a plague fall on your monster, referring to Caliban. And he says that the devil should cut your fingers for hitting me. So he is cursing both Caliban as well as Stephano for Stephano assaulting him then. And Caliban is amused, obviously, that he has been beaten up. Trinculo has been beaten up. Beat him enough. After a little time, I will beat him too. So he says, after a little while, even I will beat him too. Now, after that, now Caliban reveals his plot. What will they do in order to get rid of Prospero? Caliban says, it is Prospero's habit to sleep in the afternoon. Okay, it's a custom with him in the afternoon to sleep, he says, and then you can go and dash out, break out his brains. And he says you also should make it a point to first seize his books, because they are the source of all his magical power. And with a log, that is a wooden log, you should kind of batter, as in just smash his skull or even rip open his stomach or cut his windpipe with which he breathes with a knife. So essentially painting an extremely violent picture, and that brings out the true nature of Caliban, that he is basically a monster. What Trinculo is referring to him as as Stephano is referring to him as moon calf. He's indeed a monster because he's given to extremely violent ways. And this paragraph is important because it brings out the extremely violent temperament of Caliban. So this particular paragraph is important in that sense. So please mark this paragraph and understand what exactly is talking about. The word sot refers to a fool, that he is but a fool, and brave utensils essentially means all the other kind of equipment which are kept in Prospero's household, which also are related to his magic. And then he says non-peril means someone who is without equal. Now the other point that he says is that without his books he is ordinary and foolish as I am. Like, he refers to him as a fool, and he says without his books he and I would be absolutely equal. He will not have a single spirit who he can command on that island, and the spirits also, he alleges, actually hate Prospero just like I hate Prospero. He says burn his books, and he refers to them, as I said, brave utensils, brave tools, and he says it is his house, the cave is adorned with those books. Then he goes on to talk about Miranda, right? And he says that she's unequaled. I mean, Prospero believes that she's unequaled in terms of beauty. But whereas as far as Caliban is concerned, he has never seen any other woman except Sycorax, his mother, and now Miranda. So he says if they were to be compared, that is Miranda and Sycorax were to be compared, my mother is the least in terms of beauty, whereas Miranda is the most beautiful person. So Stephano's interest in Miranda is now awakened, right? Because of the manner in which Caliban has described Miranda. So Caliban is also feeding the interest, saying that she will become thy bed, I warrant, and bring thee forth brave brood. That is, the two of you can have children, and you can be she can be her queen, his queen. Monster, I will kill this man, his daughter and I will be king and queen, save our graces, and Trinculo and thyself shall be viceroys, thou like the plot Trinculo. So he now says that I and Miranda will be king and queen, and Trinculo and you will be viceroys on this island. Okay, though not ruling over anyone because there is no one else if Prospero gets killed. So Trinculo says excellent. So Trinculo is in agreement at that point in time for whatever plot he is making, and then at that time Stephano begs for forgiveness, or at least says sorry to Trinculo for having assaulted him, for having beaten him, but again advises him to keep a civil tongue, as in be polite in the manner in which you speak. Caliban feels that his freedom from slavery from Prospero is actually now coming very soon. Within this half hour, will he be asleep? Will thou destroy him then? He is asking Stephano. So he says that I am full of pleasure, let us be jocund, again, make merry, and will you troll the fish catch you taught me but will err. And then he wants him to also teach him that particular song which Stephano was earlier singing. Now Stephano is also a little suspicious, because now the tune starts singing, and he is wondering where the tune is actually coming from, and Caliban also says that's not the tune, which is Ariel who is playing the tune. So he is getting a little suspicious and curious, because obviously it is being played by someone who is invisible. So he kind of dares Ariel, okay, saying that if you are a man, you come out in your shape, do not be invisible, but if you are a devil, you can come in any shape as you please. So he does realize that there is a fourth element also there on that island apart from the three of them, who is invisible. So he is daring Ariel to come out and present himself. This is the tune of our catch, played by the pitcher of nobody. So Trinculo begs for forgiveness from the devil. But the three of them decide to go towards Prospero's cave. Caliban will lead them because they want to execute the plot while Prospero is asleep. And Caliban says, do not be afraid, because this island is actually full of noises. He tells them that this island actually has a lot of these kind of noises, so there is nothing to be scared of. There are sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twanging instruments, that is making that kind of a sound, will hum about mine ears. So it's obviously he has been used to Ariel playing these kind of tricks, and also the other spirits which are commanded by Prospero. and that if I then had waked after long sleep will make me sleep again. So he's used to Ariel doing all that to kind of make people sleep as a result of all the magic that Prospero and he do. And then in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked I cried to dream again. So he's kind of talking about the different effects that take place on this island as a result of some kind of magic, all kinds of weird sounds that are there on this island. This will prove a brave kingdom to me, where I shall have my music for nothing. So he's saying, oh, this is going to be an interesting kind of a kingdom for me, where I will rule along with Miranda, with Trinculo and Caliban as his viceroys. And he says noises. When he says noises, and he's referring to music for nothing, means that he will not have to pay for it. Noises is referring to the musical words, that he will not have to pay for all this music that is being played. Caliban reminds him, when Prospero is destroyed. That's important. This can only happen if and when Prospero is destroyed. That shall be by and by. He says that will happen. I remember the story. That will happen right now at present. The sound is going away. Let's follow it and after do our work. So Trinculo is kind of following the voice, following the sound, and he realizes that Ariel's sound is actually going away a little distance. And then they go along with Caliban in order to execute the conspiracy that they have hatched in order to get rid of Prospero. Okay, so that's as far as Act 3, Scene 2 is concerned. Act 3, Scene 3, we will see once again Alonso and Gonzalo in the picture. We have not seen them for a while, so they will make their appearance. And you realize the manner in which the subplot is slowly merging into the main plot. And that's the beauty of Shakespeare, that through his different scenes, he's slowly building up to Act 4 and Act 5 when the climax of the Tempest actually takes place. Thank you very much for watching.